Good morning, Dr. Cook. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks, Binu.
Yeah, we have around 7 people joined as we wait for others to join. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Fine. Yep.
Where are people joining from, Binu? I wonder if they could put in the text are they able to put in the chat where they're joining from?
Yeah, that is a good idea. So can you all please put in the chat where you're joining from? And if you have any questions, please post it in the chat. Yeah. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Flourish Well's YouTube live series. This is the conversation that is close to all of our heart, that is well-being-centered leadership. Especially as you know, David and Dr. Cook, that in India, the government of India is strongly, they are adding a lot of programs to strengthen the well-being programs in schools. And yesterday I read that with the Ministry of Education reportedly preparing to place school-level mental health policy in the public domain for consultation in early June. So with all these things to focus more on strengthening mental health support, this is the right time for us to come together from the people who are so focused and so invested in the well-being in the school life to talk about this topic. So we are so glad to welcome Dr. Cook, Principal, Queen Elizabeth School, Gurgaon, India, and Mr. David Bott, the co-founder of Wellbeing Distillery. Welcome to this channel and this series to talk about well-being-centered leadership.
Thank you, Binu.
Thank you, Binu, and thanks for everybody who's joining us. Appreciate you.
Thanks. So happy to be here.
So I would like to reflect on, what actually well-being-centered leadership means in practice. We talk a lot about well-being-centered leadership. What's actually mean in practice when it comes to, because Dr. Cook, you as a leader, you led so many schools across Asia, and even though this is the second school that you're leading in India, so you may have a vast experience about this area. So can you please talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Thank you, Binu, and thanks everybody for joining us this morning or today, wherever you're calling in from. Yeah, I think Binu, it starts with modeling. We can't talk about well-being and flourishing as school communities unless we really model it for our communities. And so I think when we talk about leadership and well-being and allowing communities to flourish, one has to start with themselves. And I've just been saying to a lot of people, it's like there's only one of you, and you've got to take care of yourself, and you're not able to help others as they will unless so. And that can be a challenge in leadership context when so much is demanded of us at every turn. And so I like to just start with ourselves. A lived practice where one cares for self, where one has boundaries, in a sense, healthy boundaries, where we know our limits, and we know when we're hitting that wall where it's just too much, too much going on, and people aren't going to get our best selves when we put ourselves in those situations. So just being able to manage with intentionality our own schedules, and then modeling care and holistic approaches to staff, to students, where they feel supported. We're not robotics or robots in the modern world. We're still human beings and we have to be able to make those safe kind of areas for our staff, our students, to take a deep breath and just say, it's okay. Each day has enough trouble all its own, and we did what we can do today, and let's get rest. Let's take care of ourselves as we lead community. So I would just start there with the modeling and understanding yourself, but then creating those conditions for our staff and our students where they feel supported as whole humans.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Cook. And David, as you know, you led well-being programs. You help, I think, more than 25 countries. You help schools to build this well-being framework. So what is your thought on, well-being centered or flourishing school culture? That is something which you focus all the time.
Yeah, I love what Dr. Cook said about the only place he wanted to start that discussion there, that point, was starting with the leader themselves. And I couldn't agree more. But I want to just give a slightly different angle to this as well. Because there's a phrase that we've been using lately, not well-being-centered leadership, but well-being adjacent. And came out of a conversation. We've got the programs, we've got the budget, we've got all the curriculums, we've got the role, well-being leader role, but something's still not working. And when we dug into it, the issue wasn't the wellbeing program or the curriculum, it was everything around it. There was a packed timetable that left no breathing room. There was a culture that drained people around them before the weekend began. There was reporting software where teachers were kind of ranked on the number of comments they were putting per student. So none of these were officially wellbeing decisions, not officially, but they were wellbeing decisions that were being made. So the way we sort of see wellbeing-centered leadership is it's not what you add, it's how you see your community. Is kind of maybe a slight difference to what, or addition to what Craig was saying. So like in day-to-day life, wellbeing-centered leadership or wellbeing adjacent leadership looks like this. It's the leader who notices that the staff meeting is being run in a way that depletes people and changes it, right? It's the leader who looks at the term calendar and asks, where's the recovery? Where's the oscillation? Where's the micro recovery time? Before they ask, where's the work? It's the leader who sends an email at 8 o'clock in the morning instead of 10 p.m. at night, not because the policy says they have to, but because they understand that their inbox, or the way they use their inbox, is teaching staff something about what's expected. So it's a different way to see the community. And so none of this kind of wellbeing-centered thing is about the curriculum or the program. As Dr. Cook said, it's really about the way you're holding yourself, the way you're caring for yourself, but also the way that you're seeing the community around you and responding to it.
Yeah, thanks, David. I personally experienced that side. When the leader is a visionary leader who is ready to invest in well-being, it's like you said, it's not like adding more programs by well-being adjacent, by being conscious about the well-being of the staff and students, the human core of the institution in daily activities. That actually makes the difference. So that is where the true well-being starts. When the leader is ready to invest in that, like David, you always mentioned, we don't need any extra staff. We don't need any extra budget for that. We just need a conscious act. That is where the true change happens. And I'm so glad that, that this conversation happens here, because many schools struggle because they think that they need to create a separate program to add to this. So that is where that hesitation or the difficulty to implement this starts. And also another thing that I've noticed is the leader should have a vision about well-being, because if the leader thinks that it is a waste of time, even simple things like socio-emotional learning, that is the backbone of any school, that is the backbone of building future citizens, with a good emotional mental health and resilience. So if the leader thinks that adding SEL is a waste of time, taking away the timetable hours, that is where that we actually need to worry about where the school is heading to.
Yeah, and I think,
sorry, Craig, please.
No, just to add to what you were saying there, a question I've begun to ask myself, whatever context I'm in, besides your formal role, what are you going to contribute to the proceedings, to the social order, if you will, of whatever organization you're contributing to, whether it's education or not? And the question is, how can I humanize what's going on here? And I think that's that emotional intelligence that we as leaders need to bring to the proceedings, whatever they are. Yes, sometimes you have to make hard calls and difficult decisions that impact human lives directly, but they can always be done, no matter what those are, in a very humanizing way where we understand. And frankly, one of the axioms that I picked up from my dad, who was a university president for 25 years, he would always say, bad news in person, good news in writing. And the reason he said that was part of that humanizing aspect, because when he had to deliver bad news to somebody, he wanted them to see his whole person, his emotions, his, the struggle that this had to be done, but yet I still feel you, the pain that it may cause, or the challenges that this presents to you. And then good news, because when people get affirmed, they like to go back, and if they read that email from their direct report that affirms them for the job they're doing, or that they've done, they can go back to it and see it again and again. So I think those things as leaders, just humanizing whatever is in front of us, is so important in this endeavor.
Can I ask you, Craig, about this idea that we often, with the leading schools around the world that we work with, we try to have this premise that every lesson should be a well-being lesson, because the year 8 geography lesson, or the grade 11 physics lesson, or the grade 2 literacy lesson, all of those should be also well-being lessons, because the pedagogy of the educator, their craft, is informed by well-being science. To extend that further, would you agree that well-being-centered leadership really emerges when every decision is a well-being decision? Where every decision is a well-being decision. Does that make sense to you in your experience, Craig? That's really what well-being-centered leadership's about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can even think back to my own international education career now, 30 plus years. And I had a personal situation with the dengue fever situation where I was just sick. Everybody was sick in the family. And it felt like at one point I was going to be sent home, just because they didn't know how to, engage with the illness. But I had a guidance counselor who was a veteran teacher who was in the meeting, and she just backed up everybody and said, that we have to care for the whole person here and the family. And that really absolutely saved my international education career, because I would have, gone back home. And but that was a person that was doing this very thing, understanding the whole context that we were in, even as a fellow staff member, as an educator, which is so important to keep in mind as we work with other colleagues and students as well.
Can I push you one step further? Sorry, Binu, can I ask one more question just further? I love the stories you're sharing, Craig, these real life examples that are so clear in your mind, make it clear for us. But I also want to extend you further outside of individual examples to kind of think about culture as well. One of my favorite quotes about leadership and culture comes from Professor Edgar Schein from MIT, who was a Swiss-born American business theorist and psychologist. And he said the only thing that leaders do is create and manage culture. The only thing of real importance that leaders do is create and manage culture. And